Hi, everybody. Welcome to the first episode of SpookNotes podcast, where we get academic about horror movies.
Where we get academic about everything ooky, spooky, and kooky.
I'm Connor.
My name is Marlayna.
Welcome to the podcast. So,
bitches.
So today, on our first episode, we thought we'd give a little introduction to what the podcast is going to be. So basically, the reason we're making this podcast is because me and Marlayna both love horror movies, and all things horror.
That's right.
We love books, the movies, the TV shows, video games, all of it. And we both are university students.
Correction, university graduates.
University graduates. So, one of our favorite things is to look at movies or games or whatever from an academic point of view and try to discuss and analyze some of the themes, metaphors, and other kind of in-depth analysis that a movie might have.
Yes, indubitably, very much so.
So, basically, we thought we'd just introduce ourselves and what each episode's podcast is going to be like. So, basically, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be choosing a movie each episode and then kind of talking about it in a variety of manners. We're going to summarize it, what the movie's about, try to give a history of the film.
Yeah, and we're also going to incorporate some of our own opinions as well as the opinions from the general public, just to see that comparison there.
Exactly, and kind of give behind-the-scenes details, things like that. Mm-hmm. And then the main part of the show is we're going to be examining the themes of the movie, metaphors, any Easter eggs or small details that some people might miss, and then at the end give our final takeaway of the movie, what we think the movie's about on a deeper level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's pretty much how we want each episode to run. Obviously, we're expecting little bumps in the road because we've never created a podcast before, so this is kind of like a learning experience for both of us. So we'd appreciate any, feedback from you guys that do listen, just to give us some advice, perhaps maybe like what movies and stuff you'd like us to talk about, or even just some tips on overall podcasting, because we're kind of newbies at this, so.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is going to be a conversational podcast with me and Marlayna. We are going to be talking about the movies. We are not film experts. We have not gone to film school. We just really enjoy horror movies in particular and all things horror. And being that we both have a lot of knowledge with academic writing and that kind of thing, we thought we'd kind of bring that perspective to horror movies, because when we watch horror movies, we like to talk about them afterwards and kind of discuss what we thought what they were about, not only on the surface level, but on a deeper level. And we thought, well, why don't we make a podcast about this, since we talk about it every time we watch a movie anyways. So, yeah. So anyways, I thought we'd also introduce ourselves a little bit on this episode. Tell you guys who we are, basically. So my name's Connor.
Hello, Connor.
I graduated from the University of Waterloo. I have a history degree. And I also have another blog outside of this podcast where I've been writing about horror movies for almost a year now. It's called the Brain Damage blog.
Follow that up.
Hit
that follow button. Subscribe.
And how about you, Marlayna?
Well, my name is Marlayna. I will be graduating from the University of Waterloo this coming June, and my major was in public health, and then I minored in gerontology, which is just aging studies. So yeah, that's a little bit of academic background on me, and actually I'm going to be pursuing further education just in office administration, because I don't know what I want to do with my life, so let's add more education to my resume. And Connor here is actually going to a teacher's college, so that's pretty cool.
Exactly, which ties into kind of what we're talking about the academic look at horror movies. So, speaking of horror movies, we also thought we'd kind of introduce our kind of background with horror. So, when did you first get into horror movies?
Honestly, I would say when I was fairly young. I don't know, my parents didn't really do a good job of kind of, taking the horror movies away from me, so I would say from a very, early age. I was watching movies like The Shining, which is actually one of my favorite horror movies of all time. So, yeah, like, that was probably, like, the first official, like, horror movie I ever saw. Actually, no, I take that back. Child's Play. That was the first movie I ever saw.
That was
A horror movie. And I remember just being so freaked out because I actually had a, oh my gosh, what are they called? Those, like, dolls? Like, the ceramic dolls, and it was huge. This thing was, like, my size. And it was sitting in my room, and I remember, like, I was fine with it prior to seeing the movie. And then I saw the movie, and I'm not even kidding. I, in the middle of the night, got up and took that doll and brought it all the way downstairs. So, yeah, from that moment on, that would probably mark when I first started watching horror movies. But, you know, I was a kid, and I was scared of them back then, but I still enjoyed watching them. Now I just am like, YOLO. Just gonna watch them for funsies. What about you?
Well, I'm kind of the opposite. Even though I'm really into horror movies now, I actually didn't start watching horror movies until later on in life. I think the first horror movie I ever saw was when I was maybe 14.
Really?
Yeah, really.
Oh my god, okay.
Like, I the first horror movie I ever saw that I remember was actually the first Paranormal Activity.
That was your official...
That was my first horror movie that I remember. Like, out and out horror movie. Like, I had seen, like, movies that have horror aspects to them, but, like, the first real horror movie, yeah, was Paranormal Activity. And then I watched movies like The Mist. I Am Legend is somewhat of a horror movie, more of like a sci-fi movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I didn't get into them until late, because I was scared of them as a kid. Like, I figured that, you know, I mean, why would I want to scare myself, that kind of thing. But then when I was introduced to them, to get my first exposure, it was just like love ever since. And then I've just been catching up, watching all of the classics and just watching anything I can get my hands on, even like the really crappy stuff.
Mm-hmm. That's for sure.
Yeah.
You watch a lot of the crappy stuff.
I watch everything.
But that's okay. You know, it adds to
the
fun of things. It makes you appreciate the movies that are, you know, actually good.
Exactly.
Even more.
Speaking of the movies that are actually good, what are some of your favorite horror movies? Like top 3 or 5?
Oh. 3 or 5, not
like
4.
just like some of your favorite ones.
Well, like as I mentioned before, I really, really like The Shining. That is without a doubt my favorite horror movie of all time. Other ones that I like, other recent ones that I've discovered are Scanners. I really like that one. That's David Cronenberg. I don't know, like I just really enjoy that one because of the gore aspect. Anything by James Wan, I really like. I really enjoy his style of directing, all that like that creepy, eerie vibe that he puts out. Any movies like that. What was the movie that we just saw that we really liked? The
Quiet Place?
No, the Bigfoot one.
Willow Creek?
Yeah, I really like Willow Creek. Yeah, I don't know. Honestly, the list for me just kind of goes endless.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. And sometimes it's like the more recent ones stick out in your memory more.
Yeah. Or even like Nosferatu, like the OG one.
Yeah.
Just because it's like really creepy. And back in October, we actually saw a live score of Nosferatu at a local cinema in our area. And it was really cool to see that music kind of being tied in with the silent film. It really, like, you know, highlighted the parts that were, you know, creepier than others because they adjusted the music accordingly, and other parts were more rushing around, so the music was, like, whatever. So, I don't know, I'd put that as one of my favorite ones, too.
So would you say that your favorite style of movies are kind of more the kind of toned down, creepier, slower movies?
Yeah.
Psychological, even?
Oh my god, psychological horror is, like, one of my favorite genres of all time. Just, I don't know, I like movies that make you think, that, you know, you have to go the extra mile to kind of fully appreciate the, I don't know, whatever the movie's offering, the horror genre, so.
Exactly.
Well, what about you? You haven't talked about yours.
Well, some of my, I would say my top 3 favorites, in no order, are Dracula, the 1931 movie.
Bela Lugosi.
Yes.
Or Bela, depending how you pronounce it.
It's pronounced Bella.
You told me it was pronounced Bela.
No.
And then I told you it was pronounced Bella. Okay, whatever. Yes.
The Shining as well. That's one of my favorites. I think it's so well made. And the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is probably my other favorite. Some other ones that would be up there, though not as high, would be Halloween, Friday the 13th, Frankenstein, The Fly, Evil Dead 2. I like a wide variety of stuff, but I would say my favorite subgenres would be slasher movies, obviously, and the Universal classics, like the old black and white ones. You know, Dracula, Frankenstein, Creature from the Black Lagoon, The Invisible Man. Those are some of my favorites as well. So we really just wanted to make this podcast because we love talking about horror movies, and we just wanted to share our conversations and our ideas with you guys because we thought that it might be fun to kind of talk about this on a wider scale. And I think another reason that we both wanted to make it is to make this kind of like a conversation, not only between ourselves, but to others. For example, you know, we have an email address, spooknotes@gmail.com, where we'd love to hear your feedback on the podcast. And not only feedback, but tell us, you know, what do you want to hear? What movies do you want to hear discussed? Because really, there's very few movies that at least one of us haven't seen. Like we've kind of seen it all, you know.
Yeah, that's true. I've seen a lot.
And on that note, we'd like to announce that our first real episode of the show
is drum roll. That was really bad. Okay, sorry, go.
It's going to be the Texas Chainsaw Massacre because it's one that we both love. And I think there is a lot of that film that is either under the surface. To analyze. It's either under the surface or you might not understand on first viewing or without some sort of background information. So Texas Chainsaw Massacre is going to be our first one.
Yep.
We're hoping to make this podcast bi-weekly. So once every 2 weeks. And like I said, we'd love to hear what you guys think.
Yeah.
So, Marlayna, any final thoughts?
No, I'm pretty sure we've kind of summed it all up. We've told you a little bit about us, who we are, what we enjoy, and as Connor said before, we'd like to hear from you guys what you guys enjoy, because, you know, it's fun to talk about. One of our favorite things to do is whenever we go to a movie, we actually drive home in, in our car, and we just openly talk about whatever we liked in the movie, and that's where we kind of got the inspiration to do a podcast, because we just like talking about this kind of stuff, and it's even better on a wide scale, you know, audience. So yeah, we're just really excited for this podcast, and you know, it's going to be fun to see where it goes.
Exactly. So subscribe to us on iTunes at the SpookNotes podcast. You can also find us on SoundCloud as well, if you prefer listening there.
And we're also going to be adding in a few other social medias as well, such as YouTube, maybe some Instagram as well. We still haven't figured it out entirely, but we're going to try to link everything right in the description of this this episode. So yeah, if you want to give us a follow, that would be much appreciated.
Awesome. So look forward to our next episode, our first real episode. We'll be discussing Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I've been Connor.
And I've been Marlayna.
This is the Spook Notes podcast. And don't forget to cite the Spook Notes.